So now that we've learned how to successfully add columns to a data frame in R, let's actually add rows to our data frame. So when we're adding columns, we're adding new classes, but think about adding new rows as adding new observations or new students to a given class. So I'll start off by creating a new object called new.grades. And I will set it equal to 3 new grades, the first of which will be a 70 in class 1, an 83 in class 2, and an 85 in class 3. And I can run that line of code, and then we can add it to grade.df, and we do that by using the rbind function. So similar to cbind, which combines columns, rbind combines rows. So we're going to use the rbind function, and then we're going to type in our grade.df, and then we're going to add new grades to grade.df. And we can run that line and then take a look at our new data frame in our console. And we see that we have successfully added this 11th student to class 1, class 2, and class 3 with values of 70, 83, and 85 respectively. So looks like we were successful at doing that, but I actually want to add one more student and get a little bit more practice using the rbind function. So now I'm going to create a new object called more grades, and I'm going to set that equal to 3 separate grades using the concatenate function, first of which is a 65. Next, I'm going to have a 90. And then my third class is going to have a 79. And then I will save more grades. And then I can add it to my data frame by using the rbind function. And I'm going to type grade.df. And then I'm going to hopefully add more grades to grade.df. I'm going to run line 117, and we can take a look at this new data frame grade.df. And now we have 12 students. So we successfully added line 116 more grades. So we have on our last row, we have a 65, a 90, and a 79. So hopefully you guys are comfortable adding columns and rows to data frames in R. And now we're going to move on to the next section in our code, which is going to be entitled dates and finding sums of columns and rows. So I'm going to start this section off by creating some month and year columns in for our data frame called grade.df. So most data have a temporal aspect to them. So you can think of these grades being collected obviously at a given specific place and time. So we want to add a year column and a month column to this data frame to give us some temporal resolution. So I'll start off by creating a new column in grade.df, and we're going to call this new column year. And then the year is currently 2022. We can think of all of these grades being collected this year. So I'm going to set all the values in grade.df to 2022. And I'll run that line of code, and maybe we can take a look at it in our console. And we have successfully added a fourth column to grade.df entitled year, and all of the values are equal to 2022. So that's great. So now I'm going to add a new column, and it's going to be called month. So I also want to have a month column, and I want the month to be equal to this month.ab. So you can see that there's the purple tag associated with this index here, month.ab. So R has a couple different objects that are built in with it. So month.ab stands for month abbreviation. So those are going to be 3-letter month abbreviations from January to December. And we can run that, and we'll take a look at it in our console by typing out grade.df. So now we have a year column, which is all of the values are equal to 2022, but our month column is actually equal to 12 different values ranging from January to December. So all of the months of the year. You can think of each row as a different month, but they're all taken within the year 2022. So now I don't want just a year and month column. I actually want to combine those into one column, which is a little bit more efficient in my data analysis. So I'm going to create a new column. It's going to be called month year. It's going to be equal to kind of a combination of both the year column and the month column. So in order to combine columns, sometimes you can use the paste function. So when you're just essentially pasting values from two different columns into one column, and we start off by using this paste function, and then you have to, the arguments are what you're actually going to paste. So I would like to paste the month column with the year column. And we can take, let's take a look at our data frame grade.df. And we can look at the structure of grade.df. Now we have 6 columns, and this new month year column that we created is actually a character vector, and it's equal to, the first element is the month abbreviation. So we have January, and then the second element is this year, which all of them should be 2022. So it looks like we were successful at combining the columns from year and month into one column called month year. So now let's move on to working with dates. So as you can tell, R is currently understanding this month year column as a character vector, but which is okay, but we don't really want it to be understood as a character vector. We want R to understand it as a date element. So how do we change this column month year to a date? Well, I can do this first by creating a new column. We'll call it grade.df $date. And then we want to change the month year to a date element. And we do that by using this, because it's a month year type of date, we can use, there's actually a function, I believe it's in the zoo package, called as yearmon. So you can just think of this obviously as a year month element. So this is going to convert our character vector, which is consisted of a month and a year, to actually more of a date element, so R can work with it more properly. So I'm going to type out our month year, and then I'm going to need to tell R how it would like to interpret this month year. So there's an argument in, let's actually take a look in the help function, where we can type out in our console the question mark and as.yearmon, and then we can look in our help window, and hopefully that gives us a little bit of context of how to change characters into dates in R. So I think this is kind of the syntax that I'm going to be looking for, because here we can see that there's a 3-letter month abbreviation followed by a year. So I think the syntax for that is we're going to need a $sign, a lowercase b, and they used a lowercase y. I think that's because they have a 2-numbered year, but we want a 4-numbered year. So I actually looked this up previously to class, but I can give you some more information about how to work with years and months and dates in R, but just so we can follow along for now, you can just copy the argument that I'm going to type here. So the $sign lowercase b, that's going, oh, sorry, not the $sign, the %sign lowercase b, that's going to equate for a 3-lettered month. And then we're going to use the %sign again, and we're going to use an uppercase Y. So the lowercase b represents a 3-lettered month abbreviation, and a capital Y stands for a four-numbered year. So if I run as.yearmon with this syntax, now let's take a look at the data frame called grade.df. And we can see that this date column is being understood as a yearmon, a year month, and we have the same values, but January 2022, February 2022, but it's being understood as a year month element, which is what we originally intended. So because it's being understood as a date, we can actually work with it more effectively in R. We can actually create plots that are quite informative. So let's actually plot our data. We can do this by using the plot function. And first I'm going to start off by typing my X variable, which is going to be, let's see, we can have our date here, and then we can have grade.df, and we can type out class 1. And I'm actually going to show you guys another example of why it's helpful to have dates being understood as year months or dates rather than character elements. So in order to demonstrate that comparison, I'm going to type out the original month year. And then I'm going to have class 1. So this first plot on line 130 is the original character vector month year. And then on line 131, this is the date column, is when we converted the character vector to a date. And hopefully R will demonstrate the concept that I'm trying to teach you guys. And yes, when we try to plot the character vector month year, we get errors because R can't plot a character. It's not properly understanding what the data mean. So if I run line 131, this is the vector that we successfully converted to a date, and you can see that R no longer gives us this error message, but we're actually successful at plotting the grades from class 1 over time. So when we had a character vector, we got an error, but when we converted that column to a date, we were able to successfully plot the data over time. So now I'll be moving on to a new section, which I'm going to call column and row sums. So I just want to show you guys a couple other basic functions that I think are helpful when you're working with data frames in R. So I'll start off by creating a new object called total class.1. And let's say I wanted to find the sum of all of the grades in a given column. So how would I do that? Let's say I want to find the sum of all the grades in column 1 for class 1. So there's a function I can use to find column sums, which is call sums. And then I'm going to need to type the column that I would like to find the sum of. So if I want to select the first column of a data frame, first I type the name of the data frame, and then I'm going to use a bracket. And then I'm going to type the numeric order of the column that I'd like to find the sum of. So now if we take a look at total class 1, we can see that the sum of all the grades in class 1 is 934. So again, just to reiterate, to find column sums, we use the call sums function. Then we type the name of the data frame, and then we use in square brackets the numeric order of the column that we like to find the sum of. But let's say I wanted to find the column sums of multiple different columns. So to do that, I'll type a new object called total classes. And then I will set it equal to the column sums of, I want to find the column sums of all of the classes. So I'm actually going to type the data frame, and then I'm going to use square brackets, and then I'm going to use the concatenate function. And then I'm going to type 1, 2, and 3. So I want to find the column sums of, sorry, I'm looking at some notes to make sure my syntax is correct. So column sums of grade.df, and I want to find the sums of columns 1, 2, and 3. Hopefully that code will work for us. And if I look at total classes, it's correct. We were able to find the sums of all the classes: 934, 875, and 1094. So just want to give you guys some more basic functions that'll be very helpful when you're becoming a data scientist. And also be mindful of the square brackets. That's kind of how we work with data frames or vectors and lists when we want to signify a specific element or order of the data that we're currently analyzing. So now after we find column sums, so the sums of classes 1, 2, and 3, now I would like to actually find row sums so we can find the total summed grades over each month. So let's start off by writing an object called total grades month. And we can set it equal to this function we will call row sums. And then we're going to type the data frame that we would like to work with. And then we're going to use square brackets, and we're going to type 1:3 because we would like to sum over the first 3 columns. We don't want to take the sums of the date columns. So we just want to find the row sums for the first 3 columns. And then we can run that line of code, and then we can go into our console and take a look at what the total grades month looks like. And then, as you can see, we actually have the summed grades for each of the 12 months for our 3 classes. So hopefully you guys are able to reproduce some of the code that I'm working with, but now we're going to move on and move to our in-class assignment. And I want you to create a data frame of 5 different classes. And I want each class consisting of 20 random grades with a mean of 75 and a standard deviation of 5. And I also want you to find the mean and interquartile range of each class. And lastly, I would like you to add a new class to the data frame consisting of grades from 60 to 78 at intervals of 2. Okay, so just to recap here, I would like you to create a data frame of 5 different classes. Each class is going to consist of 20 random grades with a mean of 75 and a standard deviation of 5. And then I would like you to find the mean and interquartile range of each class. Just a refresher, to find the interquartile range, you're going to use that summary function that we mentioned earlier. And then lastly, I would like you to add a new class to the data frame consisting of grades from 60 to 78 at intervals of 2. So if you would like to get the same answers that I'll be working with, make sure to set your seed when you're creating each of these 20 random grades from each class. So we're going to have 5 different classes. You can set your seed for class 1 at 100, class 2 at 200, class 3 at 300, class 4 at 400, and the last class at setting your seed at 500. So you don't have to do that. That's just kind of an easy thing if you would like to reproduce the same results that I'll be getting. Hopefully you guys will be able to work on this in-class assignment, and you can pause the video and then tune back in when you're done, and hopefully we'll have the same answers. Talk to you soon.